All right, so let's work out our calculation here. So remember, we're dealing with our base year of 2003. Sorry, our base year of 2002. So we're going to be using the prices of 2002 and the output of 2003. So let's figure this out. So our real GDP of 2003 and our 2002 is our base year, is we're going to use our output of 2003. So I'm just going to write down our formula here. So in this case, we only have two goods, so it's balls and bats. So we're going to put our quantity of balls of 2003 times the price of balls. So this is 2003 and 2002. And then we're going to add that to our quantity of bats of 2003 times the prices of bats in 2002. Okay, so that is what we're going to do. So what is that going to be equal to? So that is going to be 160 balls times $1 plus 22 bats times $5. Add that together and we're going to get a real GDP of 270. So that is your real GDP of 2003. And let me just move that out. Okay, so that is the answer to this question. Calculate real GDP of 2003 when we're only dealing with balls and bats. So how do we measure economic growth? Economic growth is, by definition, if you look at this formula, is real GDP in our current year minus real GDP in our last year divided by real GDP in our last year. And if you went through, I guess, accounting with Mr. Kambashi, he will often use it would be real GDP new minus real GDP old divided by real GDP old, okay? So let's use our last example to figure out economic growth. Now, you can see here that our 2002 is our old prices and 2003 would be our 2002 would be our old GDP and 2003 would be our new GDP. So if you look at our formula, our real GDP current would be what we calculated of 270. Our real GDP old, or our real GDP of our last period, well, that would be our nominal GDP of 2002. So here is one thing to know. In 2002, we calculate nominal GDP. However, here is the main key point. For the base year, nominal GDP is the same as real GDP. So you can just, in this case, use our nominal GDP calculation of 200. So remember one thing. For the base year, real GDP is the same as nominal GDP. So let's just finish this. Let's use our previous table as an example to calculate real GDP. So our economic growth is equal to our real GDP from our current year minus our real GDP from the last year. So our real GDP from our current year, well, we calculated that. That is equal to 270. Our real GDP from our last period, we're using our nominal GDP of 2002. And then we're going to divide it by our GDP from our last period times 100. So we can figure out here that our economic growth from 2002 to 2003 is equal to 35%. All right, so this literature stuff, I am going to leave that to you. It's just a commentary of, you know, some of the flaws of GDP. There are things that we're not able to measure. Here is a calculation of GNP per capita. So whenever you see the word per capita, it means that we are looking at GDP or GNP per person. So per capita means that we're dividing the total by our population in that nation. So that is, that pretty much concludes our GDP and our GNP discussion.